Okay, good morning. Let's begin. We begin Parshat Vayeitzei, right? Page 106. That's Genesis 28, verse 10.
Oh, could I ask you something about last week's Parshat?
Sure.
It said, I don't know, maybe the English is not, but Esau thought in his heart that when, after Isaac died, that he would kill Jacob. But Rebecca heard what he said. Now, there's something there. I don't know what it was. If he said it to himself, how did she know what he was thinking?
It's a very good question. Right? What did he say? He said,
he did a Shakespearean soliloquy. Oh, that I could kill my brother.
It's right. He says the pasuk says explicitly, and Esav said in his heart, if the days of when my father dies, I'll kill my brother. And these words were told to Rivka. Very interesting. Yeah, it's a good question, and I have a sense that someone said this, that somebody speaks to this. But let me check. Let's see.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
No. This is good. Right here. This is the book you want.
So maybe she's very intuitive.
Okay, so let's see here. Let's look at, what did we say it is? It's Exodus 27, verse 41, and it's on page 100 in the Chumash. And so Rashi says right there, Rivka was told this with divine inspiration, the Holy Spirit was told to her that which Esav is thinking in his heart. Rabbi Ramban, however, says that despite the fact that it says Esav said in his heart, he still may have told it over, said something later to one of his friends.
Mm-hmm.
Any other insights here? Let's see. It's interesting that that it's revealed to Rivka with the Ruach HaKodesh, with divine insight, but not to Yitzchak.
Yeah.
So
Well,
so there's I mean, and at this point, it's interesting. At this point, Yitzchak knows what happened.
he does.
Of course, Yitzchak has
Oh, he
told
knows that.
Yaakov,
Yeah.
meaning he gave him the blessing, and then Esav shows up and he
Right.
says, "What about my blessing?" He's, "Oh, I gave a blessing to
Yeah.
somebody else. It
No.
was your brother. He must
Right.
have right. He got wind of the whole story now."
No, I thought you meant he knew about the plan to kill him.
Right, but it's saying it wouldn't be a surprise.
Well, maybe it would because he idealized.
Yes. So this is one approach to understanding the story is to say that, and this is also an understanding of why it wasn't revealed to Yitzchak earlier that Esav is wicked, and the idea is that nobody wanted to speak ill of Esav. It was lashon hara. Rivka didn't want to speak ill of Esav to her husband. God didn't want to speak ill of Esav to Yitzchak. If he doesn't see it, he doesn't see it. There's no need to disparage Esav, to speak negatively about him, lashon hara. And so he didn't speak negatively. There's no toeles. There's no, meaning it's permitted to speak lashon hara. It's permitted to speak negatively if your intent is positive. Right now, so you say, what circumstance could that possibly be? When could there be a circumstance in which you speak negatively about someone and your intent is positive? Well, all right, to save someone's life. Look, if you know that someone is going out with someone, right, and you know that person that they're going out with has some problem that, I had recently had a story where she's dating this guy and she doesn't know that he's an alcoholic, right? So when he goes to Kiddush on Shabbos, they live in different communities and they hang out together, whatever. When they date, they don't drink maybe, but on Shabbos, every Shabbos, he's pounding back cups of vodka. You go tell her, of course you tell her. That's a mitzvah to tell her. Is it disparaging him? Yes. Right. So that would be positive, negative speech.
Yes.
The key is
you take delight in another person's misfortune or bad,
right.
bad flaws.
Right. Even by the way, even if you don't take delight, so there's a question of negative intent, right? There's a question of positive intent, right? And then there's neutral intent, or even positive intent, but with negative outcome, right? So a person could say, look, I think you need to know this thing. What if the person doesn't need to know? Okay, then you may have a good intent, but the act is still negative, right? And similarly, another aspect of this is that it has to be not exaggerated, just the facts, man. Because then you're speaking disparagingly, there's no benefit to exaggerating the story, right? There's no toelis there.
Abe did something years ago. Somebody asked him if his son-in-law should go into business with this person, and Abe knew the person was not trustworthy. So he said, "Well, he sings very well." And the man said to him, "Yeah, I know." He said, "But I'm asking about if he should go in business with you." And Abe said, "He sings very well." And the man said, and Abe said, "He sings very well." And then finally the guy got it.
That's great.
So that was it, without saying anything negative.
That's great.
But he got, and I think
Yes.
it probably saved the person a lot of tzoros.
Yes.
So, sometimes you can do it that way without actually saying it.
Yeah. So that's one aspect, but the question here, Yitzchak might know that Esav is angry, but does he know that Esav is angry to the point that he would kill his brother, that's not necessary for him to know. He's not in a position to do anything about it, and all it would do would cause him grief, and it would just be speaking negatively. Whereas Rivka found a way to handle it, and she did. And for Rivka, it wasn't lashon hara, because Rivka knew what Esav was capable of.
She says the daughters of Heth, who is she's afraid that Jacob
The Hittites.
Won't find an adequate mate
Right.
among them.
And Esav has married 2 Hittite women. And the Torah says explicitly that they were a nightmare for both Yitzchak and Rivka.
So she gave him a good reason to send Jacob away.
Yeah.
Without dissing her other son.
Right.
Process.
Yeah. Speaking of Yaakov and Esav, last week we talked a little bit about the different dynamic that Yaakov and Esav each embody. Yaakov, we said, embodies the feminine ideology, the feminine dynamic, being tam, being pure. Is that what we said? Yeah, Esav. Yeah, and Esav is the strictly business. Yeah? Is that what we said?
Was it live wealth in tents? Was that?
Yeah.
Is that the
Yaakov
phrase
dwelt in
used?
tents, yeah. And Esav is the hunter, right? So we see a little bit of the switching of roles in this week's Parsha, where, let's see. Is that? Let's see if I can find the verse. Right, so it's kind of, we're skipping to the end here. It's chapter 31, verse 17. So that's page 111. 30. I'm sorry, not 111. It's 114, verse 17. So, for those that are familiar with the story, Yaakov has gone to Haran to get away from his brother / to get married, and he ends up moving in with his father-in-law and working for him, or he meets his cousin Rachel, falls in love with her, asks for her hand in marriage from her father, ends up marrying her and her sister and working for her father-in-law. And of course, Yaakov and Lavan, his father-in-law, have a rocky relationship. And Lavan is his uncle also, right? It's Rivka's brother.
Right.
And eventually he feels that he has paid his dues to his father-in-law, and it's time for him to get up and out of the house. So he consults with his wives, and then read verse 17. And Yaakov rose up and set his sons and his wives upon the camels. He set his sons and his wives upon the camels.
He has several wives, Yaakov? Oh,
Yes.
wives, yeah,
Yes.
Rachel and Leah
Right.
at that point.
And look, Rashi points out that he did not follow the rule of ladies first. He put his sons first, and then his wives onto the camels. Note, however, Rashi says that Esav did observe the rule of ladies first. If we look at verse, let's see, chapter 36. Chapter 36. Verse 6. Chapter 36, verse 6. That's page 132. And Esav took his wives and his sons. Right? So it's the same, actually, almost exactly the same phrasing. And Esav took, and Yaakov took his sons and his wives, and Esav took his wives and his sons. So Esav does ladies first, Yaakov does men first.
It reminds me of a thing we used to say when I was a kid. Ladies first, everywhere, even in the electric chair. That would fit him.
So the Rebbe says something beautiful about this. He says, when you think about the different dynamic of the masculine dynamic and the feminine dynamic, masculine dynamic is rules based, hierarchy, strict order, policy, and the feminine dynamic is spontaneous, spirituality, experiential, personal. And so he says Yaakov needs to focus on putting the men first, meaning to focus primarily on making sure that he's well ordered and disciplined, and that he has consistent practice in his life that embodies who he is. Esav, on the other hand, has to find someone like Esav, who struggles with darkness and with negativity and all those kinds of things, has to first find what makes him fly, has to first find what excites him. And only then can he be expected to find order in his life. Meaning, if Esav would want to turn his life around and start, if we would have hope of Esav becoming a better person, it wouldn't be by following the rules. It would be by finding inspiration. And that's why when talking to Yaakov, we first speak about the sons, the rules. When we talk to Esav, we first speak about the women, the wives, the inspiration. So a person has to know when they're trying to improve their connection with Hashem, or in general trying to improve as a person, so you have to ask yourself, am I an Esav or am I a Yaakov? I think we each know what we are. Some of us are by nature good people, and it's just a matter of knowing what the halacha is and knowing what the right thing to do is, because I don't struggle, I just don't know much, right? So if that's the case, focus on learning halacha. Focus on learning what's the right thing to do. But if somebody finds himself in spiritual turmoil, emotional torment, finds himself in a position of uncertainty, and they feel that they're struggling with dark forces, so they should focus on learning chassidus, on learning something that inspires them, on learning something that's spiritual, spiritually uplifting, rather than and then of course later on it doesn't say don't do it, but Yaakov learned halacha first and then inspiration, and Esav needs to learn inspirational teachings first and then to learn halacha. So I thought it was a nice teaching, and I think it corresponds to the idea that Yaakov is inherently already has that inspired sense about him, and therefore he has to focus on the other side, on the Esav type thing. And Esav inherently is somebody who knows this idea of strictly business, and therefore he has to focus on uncovering his inspiration.
And I think it shows that Yaakov was not, what should I say? He was more pashut, simple. Not simple like stupid, but simple that he wasn't crafty like Rebecca and Esau, because it says when he came to Lavan, he told him everything, which means he must have told him about the conflict with his brother. Had he been a little bit more crafty, he would have let that part of the story out. It would have benefited him
How so?
to repeat that.
How so?
Because Lavan figured that he could take advantage. This guy's not going home.
Right. He's a refugee. He needs my shelter.
Right. It's like you tell your boss you need the job. The boss will put on you everything much more than he would if you didn't say you need how desperately you need it.
Right.
Because he knows you'll do anything to keep it. That's it.
So I want to look a little bit also, and
He has his crafty side too. I mean,
What?
Yaakov has his crafty side too.
Yeah, but obviously not as much. Not 100% what he would have.
so I want to look at while we're here in the end part of the Parsha, chapter 31, verse 40. Verse 40.
Okay.
That's on page 116. So he's run away. He's decided to leave the house with his wife, with his children, with all his stuff. He doesn't tell Lavan that he's leaving because he doesn't want to hassle, right? Lavan is liable to sue him, saying that he owes him something, or that and in this way force him to stay longer. So he leaves. Eventually, Lavan realizes that he's gone and comes chasing after him, and right away starts manipulating him. And Yaakov loses his cool, and for the first time, and Lavan begin. Meanwhile, there's another side point is that Rachel has stolen Lavan's teraphim, his icons, his idols, his for whatever he uses them for.
And what was Rachel going to be using it for?
Well, I guess she didn't want her father to have them. So Lavan comes in Lavan chases after them, and he starts fishing around in the tent to see if he can find them. Now Yaakov doesn't know anything about this, and so as far as he's concerned, his father-in-law has come after him now and is just harassing him, drummed up some new excuse to make him stay. And Yaakov lost his cool, and he fought with Lavan. Yaakov said to Lavan, verse 36, "What is my trespass? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued after me? You've felt about through all my things. What have you found in everything? What have you found among all my things that belongs to you? Put it here before my brethren and your brethren, and let's bring proof between us." This is remember, I'm focusing on verse 40, but I just want to set up the context.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "This is 20 years that I have been with you. Your sheep and your goats have never had miscarriage. I've never eaten of your sheep. I've never brought you a torn animal. I've protected all your animals. I bore anything that you lost. I bore that loss, whether it was stolen by day or stolen by night. This is an example of Lavan being a horrible boss. He doesn't accept that there is Lavan wouldn't tolerate from Yaakov that there is a normal kind of cost of doing business and that there's normal loss, and he nickeled and dimed Yaakov for every single missing sheep. And so by day, the drought consumed me. Frost by night, and my sleep fled from mine eyes. I haven't slept, Yaakov says. I haven't lied down to sleep properly in 20 years. Yes? Now, contrast that with the beginning of the Parsha. In the beginning of the Parsha, we read of Yaakov going to sleep. Midrash tells us that throughout his entire journey, getting to this point, he hasn't slept properly. He hasn't slept properly either, because Midrash tells us that Yaakov, on his way to Haran, stops for 14 years in a house of scholarship, in the yeshiva, in the academy of Shem, who was the son of Noah. Noah's son Shem find the Semites, right? So Shem founded an academy along with Aver, and Yaakov goes to study in that academy. And throughout those 14 years in the academy, Midrash tells us that he never slept. He always fell asleep on a book every night for 14 years. And so here, at the very beginning of the Parsha, which is verse 11, page 106, chapter 28, verse 11. Yaakov went out from Beersheba, went toward Haran, and he lighted upon the place and tarried there all night because the sun was set. He took one of the stones of the place and put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. Vayishkav b'makom, he lay down in that place. So we have this midrashic teaching that says for 14 years before, he never lay down to sleep, only falling asleep on a book. For the 20 years that followed, he never lay down to sleep because he was always watching Lavan's sheep to make sure that nothing was stolen. And this is the only good night's sleep he's had in 34 years. Now, where is he sleeping? Bamakom hahu, in that place. So Rashi points out that it's in that place to exclude all the other places. But also note, what is that place? When he wakes up, even this one good night's sleep, he feels guilty about as well. Verse 16. And Jacob awakened out of his sleep after having seen a vision in his sleep of angels, of a ladder with its base on the ground going up to the heavens, with the angels of God going up and down. When he got up from his sleep, he said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not." And he was afraid, and he said, "How full of awe is this place? This can only be the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." And so he dedicates this stone that he put by his head as a monument to God in this sacred place. But isn't it interesting that In 34 years, he hasn't had one comfortable night's sleep. And finally, on that night, in that place, the only place that he sleeps, when he wakes up, he says, this was no place to sleep in. Now, the plot thickens. Because there's a midrashic teaching that says that actually Jacob on his journey was not supposed to stop in this place. As soon as he arrived in this place, in this house of God, gates of heaven, the sun set early, unexpectedly. And he said to himself, well, I better lie down right here then. And when he woke up, he found that this is the place that he's on, right? Now, what is this place? So this is the Temple Mount, the place where the Holy of Holies. Jacob slept in the Holy of Holies, in the place where no person could enter, except the high priest on the holiest day of the Yom Kippur, and even then, with intense preparation, and it was considered a really awesome thing to even enter into this space. And here Jacob has slept here. So, what is it that Jacob never sleeps and here he sleeps? And why specifically in this place? So remember that Jacob is now leaving his home. Both Beersheba, he's leaving the home where he lived with his father and his mother. He's leaving that safe place. But even in the midrashic sense, for the last 14 years, he's been in the house, he's been in the academy. And he's been surrounded by goodness, study, his love. And now he's headed into Haran, which is Haran. The word Haran actually means wrath. And he's headed wrath, R-A-T-H.
Oh, wrath.
Yeah. It's chaos, wrath.
Anger.
Yeah. And so he this is a completely new experience for him. Now, the rabbis say that the symbolism of Yaakov going from Beersheba and from the academy to Haran is symbolic of the journey of life. Every soul makes this journey from heaven to earth. And the soul is with God in heaven, and then when we're born, we enter into this world that's full of deceit and wrath and chaos, and that doesn't reflect our values. And in a certain sense, it's the journey of life also, because all of us start out our life with idealism and with high hopes and with good intentions, and then we end up in the real world and we find that our intentions and our idealism doesn't work out as well as we planned. Really, every endeavor is a journey from Beersheba to Haran. Every endeavor is a journey from a beautiful idea to a very messy implementation. And the mess of the implementation involves encountering the very problem you're trying to fix. And so actually, it's not so much a contradiction, the journey from Beersheba to Haran. It is the way it's meant to be. Every good endeavor starts out with an idea of some hope, of some beautiful intent on solving a problem. And then as you set out to solve that problem, you are necessarily encountering and going head to head with the very worst thing, the thing that bothers you the most, with the thing that's most frustrating to you, the one problem that you want to solve. You're facing up to it in the most intimate way, right? So this is the nature of everything that matters in life. is a journey of Be'ersheva to Haran. And note that it's only in Haran that Yaakov has a family, that he's able to build a family. Because family, or let's say in the symbolic sense, accomplishment, is not built in theory. It's not built in the academy. It's conceived of in the academy. But it only comes to life, it only reaches its accomplishment, its fruition in the mess of the real world, right? So the interlude, the bridge, the transition between Be'ersheva and Haran is sleep. Yes? Makes sense? How the bridge, huh?
It's interesting.
Interesting, yeah? So the Rebbe points out something. Yeah, what do you have thoughts about this, Professor?
Bridge is sleep. Am I missing something?
This is just, these are two stories. We have a story of Yaakov being in Be'ersheva. We have him going to Haran. And in between, we have sleep.
One good night sleep.
Yeah.
And he wakes up saying, "Oh, I shouldn't have slept here
Yes.
because this is a holy place."
Yes.
Where's the contradiction between sleep and holy?
Oh, it's an excellent question.
Because
What's wrong?
He encountered an angel.
Right.
Down, so that sounds like it was a good thing. Not only a restful sleep, but a spiritual sleep.
Yes.
So
And a beneficial sleep.
yes.
Spiritually beneficial,
Yes.
as well as restfully beneficial. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what's the problem with sleep? Right? No problem. So maybe that's it. It's the one thing that gives him the strength, this benefit that he had from this one night's sleep. But then the question is, why does it bother him that he slept? He should be grateful for it, right? So there are two ways of understanding there are two considerations a person might take in order to give them hope that their endeavor will be accomplished. Remember, we have this, you're about to face up to the worst thing in the world, in the one problem you want to fix, right? Your life's mission. So what could give a person hope that they can accomplish their life's mission? That they can solve this problem? So one approach is to say that this is something that I can fix. It's a problem, but I can reshape it. I can channel it. I can polish it. I can work with it to transform it. And the other approach is to say, there's no problem at all. To say, there's nothing for me to fix, but who's to say that this is really who's to say that there isn't goodness there? So let's say in let's give, for example, a person who's going to go and teach. Right? That's my life, right? So this person spends 14 years in the academy, learning everything there is to know. And what is their biggest problem? What is their nemesis? Their nemesis is ignorance. Right? It's the one thing that they are fighting against, ignorance. And so now they're going to Haran. They're going to meet ignorant people to teach them. And so the first thought they have to have, you would think, is that I'm effective. I can do this. And they can be taught. Right? This ignorance, as scary as it is to me, and it's so scary to me that I spend 14 years fortifying myself against it. I have hope that all those ignorant people out there can be taught something. The other idea is to say, who is to say that those ignorant people are not better than me? Or that or I'll put it this way, who's to say that I'm really better than those ignorant people? Who's to say that there's something inherently more good about them than me? And so this is represented by sleep. So actually, the Torah is teaching us that rather than saying, oh, I'll teach you, and then we'll find out that actually we're on the same level, he says, no, start out the other way. Actually, we're on the same level. We're all equally inherently valuable. And then after that, we can go and discover ways in which we can cooperate, benefit from each other, etc. But it starts with the foundation that we're all equal. And this is the idea of sleep. When we sleep, so physically, a person, when they sleep, whatever talent they think they have is off. Let's say if a person as contrasted with any other living life form, we would say that our talent, what is our advantage as human beings, is our brain, right? Humans have a very advanced brain. And so when we sit, when we stand, or when we sit, we place our head above everything else. We're the only animal that really does this on a regular basis. But when we sleep, our head is on the same level as our feet. As a matter of fact, the Rabbi points out that here the head is covered by stones. Right? In other places, we talk about him protecting his head because it's his most valuable asset. But actually, he's covering his head with stones, which is in the sense to say that his head is completely useless right now. It's as useless as a stone. As a matter of fact, in this moment, the stone is stronger than his head. Right? If he's covering his head with stones to protect it, that means that the stone is in a way more useful right now than his head. Protecting it. Yeah, so he says he put it as a pillow, but yeah. Our tradition says that he surrounded his head with stones to protect it. So as a human being, our one advantage, our one talent, our one most valuable asset is no longer distinguishable, recognizable as being anything better. And this is really the first step. And then when he wakes up, he says, lo, God was in this place and I didn't know it because my brain was off. Right? My human advantage was not active, and therefore I couldn't know the sanctity of this place. But the truth is, can we ever really know the sanctity of a place? Is the human mind qualified to truly apprehend the holiness of the house of God and the gates of heaven? So all he can say is, I didn't know. Right? In a sense, knowing that you don't know is a greater form of knowledge than thinking that you know when it comes to knowing the divine. And then that, however, that doesn't stop him from going and consecrating the stone as a monument to God, which implies that we do have some method of paying homage to the sacred, of claiming something as being holy, as standing out as being holy, which, if you think about it, it contradicts the idea of not knowing where God is, right? If you don't know where God is, if you don't know of something being holy, then why would you make a monument? The answer is that first we have to establish. You're going?
I should be right back.
All right. First, we have to establish that you're not better than me, and then which is to say that really all my talents and all my advantage and all the thing that makes me great, actually, it's not really anything. I'm not anything better than you. But then afterwards, once we've established that awareness, then we can go ahead and pour oil and try and elevate. But elevating not from a point of view of being better, but elevating from a point of view of, I recognize that we all have the same holiness, and let me share with you something that I know. But the knowing itself is not my claim to fame. Knowing is just something added on to that I am already and you are already both good. This is also going into the world in general. When we as spiritual beings enter into the world, we can have a sense that the world out there conflicts with our values, and we kind of do battle with a world that conflicts with our values. And on a certain level, on a cognitive level, that is the case. But before that, we have to remember that God created everything, and that nothing is inherently, essentially more holy than another. There's no way that you're ever going to be better than someone else. All you can do is offer a particular gift. So in that sense, the going to sleep is the right preparation for going to Haran, where Yaakov is, it gives him the most hope. So going back to our example of a person who's trying to solve a problem, is that sometimes we take too much stock in our assets, in our abilities. And that stock has two downsides. One downside is that it can cause a person to become haughty and proud. But the other downside is that it can cause a person to lose hope. Because if you believe that you're inherently better than the other person, then eventually you bang your head against, when it gets tough, you bang your head against the wall. And you say, come on, these guys are, this is a real problem. And I find myself confronted with this real problem, and I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, and I don't see how I can fix this, and I don't see how I can get through this. And so it has to start with the awareness that the head and the feet are all on the same level. And that we all, that my assets are not really, don't place me essentially above anything or anyone else. So that I can go into the world with confidence and with hope, knowing that everything is good. It's only that I have to try and uncover it. Why do we love babies when they sleep? Why do we love babies when they sleep?
Sleep quiet.
No. What's good about that?
You don't have to do anything for them.
You don't have to do anything for them. They don't annoy us anymore, huh? There's something so... when a baby...
They've returned to God. They don't. They're in there, and there's no problems.
Right.
Physical.
Right. There's no problems with them when they're sleeping. Meaning, when a baby is sleeping, you can enjoy them on the essential level. When you see Einstein sleeping, you don't enjoy Einstein. Only Einstein's mother enjoys him while he's sleeping. Right? Which is to say, like, you connect with the baby on a visceral and essential level when they're sleeping without anything getting in the way. Whereas when someone's identity is their talent, then there's no benefit in them sleeping, unless you love them just for who they are. And so maybe Yaakov going to sleep before he goes to Haran is to say, before you try to fix them, love them for who they are. You're going to Haran, you're going to try and make a civilization in a chaotic and angry place. First, recognize that they can be loved in their sleep, just like you can be loved in your sleep. And then when he wakes up, then when he comes into his consciousness, but this concept contradicts the conscious awareness. Right? As soon as we come into consciousness, we immediately begin to think about, what am I good at? How am I going to solve the problem? Right? So as soon as he wakes up, he says, "Oh, I shouldn't have slept there, because sleep is bad." And in a sense, we're supposed to think like we're not supposed to leave the world saying, "I love it for who it is." Right? We have to start out saying, "I love you for who you are. Now let me fix you." Right? The "I love you for who you are" is 100% clear and solid. Has to be established as the strong foundation. Then I go and fix you. Yeah. There is a play with that title. Not exactly, but yeah.
I love you. You're perfect now. Change.
Love you, perfect now. Change. Right. So there it's presented as a contradiction. In reality, I think that that when we work with people, that it's not necessarily a contradiction, and it shouldn't be. You can't accomplish something with someone else unless you first have the sense that you would love them while they're sleeping.
I'm mixing this story up. I see with the story of somebody wrestling with an angel.
Yeah, that's later. Same guy, different night.
Oh, wow, he has an active nightlife.
Yes, that's a very insightful point, that Yaakov has a very active nightlife, and that is the young man the perfect, straightforward, wholesome fellow who loves to dwell in tents finds his greatest self-actualization in the night, which is the purpose of scholarship must be to solve problems.
You found his greatest actualization, and also as a short order cook.
Short order cook? Yes. Cooking for Esav, yeah. And for his father, yeah.
No, Rebecca did.
Yes, she did the cooking, yeah. He just did the serving there. Yeah. He worked the front of the house and the back of the house.
I'm sure somewhere, maybe in Israel, there's a restaurant called Yaakov's Lentil House or something.
It's a good idea. You could make a lot of money with that.
People who like lentils.
I think lentils are only good for sentimental value. That's, at least in our story, that's what he used it for, to buy something of sentimental value, right? His right of firstborn wouldn't be of value to anybody outside the family. It's only a value to him, right? And it's not value to Esav because he has it already. Anyhow, but I digress. So this is the practical teaching, I think, here, is that when we set out to face our problems, whether those are logistical problems or human problems, we have to first sleep, which is to say, all of this already has a foundation of perfection. I love you for who you are. The problem is not a real problem. Hashem is everywhere and in everything. And that means also lying down my own sense of, I can fix this. First, submit. Say, I am not. So really, there are two lessons here. One is, first, submit that the problem you're trying to fix is not a problem. That the person, you love them for who they are, or the problem is only a problem because you think it's a problem, right? Which doesn't mean that it's not real, but that there is an underlying reality that everything is perfect. And the other is submit that you can't fix the problem on your own. You are not the source of the solution. You are not, it's not limited to you. And then so then go to sleep. And then after that, wake up and start working on the problem.
Sorry that I have to skip out on you guys.
Oh, we're done.